The rain hammered against the cracked pavement of Gangnam intersection as Benita Sam clutched her grocery bags tighter, her sneakers soaked through from the morning downpour. She was already running late for her 9 a.m. shift at the convenience store, already imagining Mr. Kim's disapproving frown when she walked in 20 minutes behind schedule. But then she saw her, the elderly Korean woman in the pale blue hanbok, standing at the edge of the crosswalk, staring at the rushing traffic with the kind of confusion that made Benita's heart clench. "Mrs. Park," Benita called out, her voice barely audible over the sound of cars splashing through puddles. The woman turned slowly, her wrinkled face lighting up with something that looked like recognition, though Benita could never be quite sure. This was the fourth time in 2 weeks she'd found the old woman at this exact spot, looking lost and disoriented, her thin fingers trembling as she gripped the strap of her worn handbag. Benita set down her heavy grocery bags on the wet sidewalk and walked over, her university textbooks getting soaked in her backpack, but she didn't care. "Come on, let me help you cross," she said gently, offering her arm. Mrs. Park's small hand wrapped around Benita's elbow with surprising strength, her fingers cold even through the fabric of Benita's jacket. The light changed. Horns blared. Seoul rushed past in its typical chaotic symphony, but Benita moved with calm certainty, one steady step at a time, positioning herself on the outside to shield the elderly woman from any possible danger. A motorcycle swerved too close and Benita pulled Mrs. Park tighter against her side, her heart pounding but her steps never faltering. When they reached the other side, Benita didn't just abandon her there. She pulled out her phone, checked the medical bracelet on Mrs. Park's wrist that had the care facility's address, then gently turned the old woman in the right direction. "Serenity Care is that way, remember?" Benita said softly, pointing north. 3 blocks. Past the coffee shop with the blue sign. Mrs. Park patted her cheek affectionately, said something in Korean that Benita didn't understand but felt in her chest, then shuffled off. Benita watched her for a full 2 minutes, making sure she was steady and heading the right way, completely unaware that 50 meters behind her, a woman in a dark jacket was photographing the entire interaction. Park Ji-young had been following Mrs. Kong for 6 weeks now, ever since the care facility hired her as a private safety monitor after the third wandering incident. The family was paying her well, very well, to discreetly shadow the old woman whenever she slipped out, ensure she didn't get hurt, and report back every detail. But Ji-young had never mentioned the young black woman in her reports. She'd told herself it wasn't relevant, that the girl was just a random Good Samaritan, that it didn't matter. Except it kept happening. Different days, different times, but whenever this girl, Benita, she'd learned from asking around, spotted Mrs. Kong looking confused, she stopped everything to help. Rain or shine, running late or not. It was the kind of consistency that felt important, even if Ji-young couldn't explain why. Today, though, Mrs. Kong had wandered further than usual, nearly made it to a dangerous highway entrance before Ji-young intervened. The old woman had been distressed, asking for the kind girl, becoming agitated when she wasn't there. It had taken 2 care facility staff members and a mild sedative to calm her down. Ji-young made a decision. She pulled out her phone and called the only number she had for the family. It rang 4 times before a cold male voice answered. "This is Kong Tae-sung. Mr. Kong, this is Park Ji-young, your mother's safety monitor. I need to speak with you about something urgent." There was a pause, the sound of voices being dismissed in the background, a door closing. "Is my mother hurt?" "No, sir, but there's been a development. She's becoming increasingly distressed during her wandering episodes, and there's something you should know. Someone has been helping her. Consistently. For at least 2 months. Another pause, longer this time. Who? A university student. Foreign. Nigerian. I have photographs and details. I think your mother has formed an attachment to her. Today when the girl wasn't there, your mother became very upset. She keeps asking for her." Tae-sung's voice dropped even lower, taking on an edge that made Ji-young's instincts scream warning. "Send me everything you have. Every photo, every detail, every interaction you've witnessed. And Ji-young, if you've been withholding information about who has access to my mother." "I wasn't withholding, sir. I thought it was just random kindness. I didn't realize the pattern until recently. Send it now. And find out everything about this girl. Where she lives, where she studies, why she's in Korea, who she associates with. I want it on my desk in 2 hours." The line went dead. Ji-young stared at her phone, a cold feeling settling in her stomach. She'd worked for enough powerful families to know when she'd just put someone in danger. The Kong family wasn't just wealthy. They had connections that ran deep into Seoul's underground, the kind of power that could make people disappear or elevate them to heights they'd never imagined. She looked at the photos on her phone, Benita's face, kind and unguarded, focused entirely on helping a confused old woman. The girl had no idea what she just walked into. Before we continue with what happens when Tae-sung discovers who's been helping his mother, smash that like button and subscribe because this story is about to take a turn nobody expected. Comment below. Would you help a stranger if you knew it might put you in danger? Now let's see what Taesung found out about Benita that made everything even more complicated. Kang Taesung stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his office in the Gangnam district, the city sprawling beneath him like a kingdom he'd fought brutally to control. The manila folder in his hands felt insignificant, just paper and ink, but its contents had consumed his thoughts for the past 3 hours. Benita Sam, 23, Nigerian, Seoul National University business student on a partial scholarship that barely covered tuition. No family in Korea. Working 3 jobs that together probably earned her less than what he spent on a single dinner. Living in a gashawan the size of a closet in a neighborhood his men used for low-level operations. She was nobody, powerless, invisible in a city that ate people like her for breakfast. And somehow, this nobody had become the one person his mother asked for when she was scared. Taesung's phone buzzed. His second-in-command, a sharp-eyed man named Moon Ho-jin, appeared in the doorway without knocking, one of the few people who had that privilege. "The girl is clean," Ho-jin said, closing the door behind him. "No criminal record, not even a parking ticket. No suspicious associations, no debt to loan sharks, no connections to any rival organizations. She's exactly what she appears to be, a broke international student trying to survive in Seoul. That's what bothers me," Taesung said quietly, still staring out the window. "Nobody does something for nothing. Not in this city. Not in this world. Maybe she's just kind," Ho-jin suggested, then immediately regretted it when Taesung turned to look at him with those cold, calculating eyes that had made grown men confess to crimes they didn't commit. "Kind," Taesung repeated, as if testing the word on his tongue. "My mother is losing her mind piece by piece, forgetting my name some days, forgetting where she is, who she is. But she remembers this girl. This stranger. Do you know what she said to the nurse yesterday? She said, 'My daughter helps me cross the street.' My mother thinks this foreign girl is her daughter." Ho-jin shifted uncomfortably. Everyone in the organization knew that Taesung's relationship with his mother was complicated. The old woman had built their empire from nothing after her husband's death, running protection rackets and gambling operations with an iron fist when Taesung was just a boy. She'd been ruthless, brilliant, feared. She'd taught her son that sentiment was weakness, that trust was a liability, that in their world, you either controlled people or they controlled you. But Alzheimer's didn't care about power. It had taken the sharpest mind Taesung had ever known and turned it into something fragile and confused. The woman who once commanded respect from every criminal organization in Seoul now couldn't remember how to find her way home. "What do you want to do?" Ho-jin asked carefully. Taesung was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working as he thought through scenarios, angles, potential threats, and opportunities. "I want to meet her, but not yet. First, I want to understand what she wants." "Everyone wants something, Ho-jin. We just need to find out what it is. And if she really doesn't want anything, then she's either a saint or a very good liar. And I don't believe in saints." He turned back to the window. "Have someone watching her. Not obviously. I want to know her routine, her struggles, her pressure points. And Ho-jin? Make sure nothing happens to her. If she's genuinely helping my mother, she's under our protection whether she knows it or not. If she's running some kind of game." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Ho-jin nodded and left, the door clicking shut with a finality that seemed to seal Benita's fate, whatever that fate might be. Meanwhile, across the city in a gashawan barely large enough to fit a bed and a desk, Benita sat on her floor surrounded by textbooks, her laptop balanced on her knees, trying to finish an assignment that was due in 6 hours. Her eyes burned with exhaustion. She'd worked the convenience store shift from midnight to 7 a.m., gone straight to her morning classes still smelling like instant ramen and cigarettes from the store, then tutored a particularly difficult 10-year-old for 2 hours. Her phone buzzed with a message from her younger brother back in Lagos. "Sister, school fees due next week. They say they'll send me home if we don't pay." Benita closed her eyes, doing math she'd done 100 times before. Her next paycheck wouldn't come for 5 days. Even if she picked up extra shifts, even if she skipped meals for the rest of the week, she'd be 200,000 Korean won short. About $150. It might as well have been $1 million. She typed back, "I'll figure it out. Don't worry." But she was worried. She was terrified. She was one emergency away from losing everything she'd worked for, her visa, her degree, her chance to build a life that could support her siblings back home. Her mother had died when she was 19, leaving her responsible for 2 younger brothers who depended on the money she sent home every month. No pressure. Just 3 lives riding on her ability to work 3 jobs while maintaining the grades necessary to keep her scholarship. Her stomach growled. She'd eaten instant noodles for the past 4 days. There was 1 pack left in her tiny cabinet, and she was saving it for tomorrow. A knock on her door made her jump. Her landlord was a week early for rent if he was coming to collect, and she had nothing to give him. She considered pretending not to be home, but the walls were thin enough that he'd heard her moving around. "Yes?" she called out, not opening the door. "Package delivery," a woman's voice said. Benita frowned. She hadn't ordered anything. couldn't afford to order anything. She cracked the door open to find a well-dressed woman in her 40s holding a large box and a clipboard. Benita Sam? Yes. Sign here, please. Confused but too tired to argue, Benita signed. The woman handed her the box, surprisingly heavy, and left without another word. Benita brought it inside, staring at it like it might explode. There was no return address, no indication of who had sent it. She opened it carefully. Inside were groceries. Real groceries. Rice, vegetables, meat, eggs, cooking oil, instant coffee. Enough food for 2 weeks, maybe more if she was careful. And at the bottom, an envelope. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was 500,000 Korean wons in cash, about $375, and a simple note written in English. Thank you for your kindness to those who need it. This is not charity. This is recognition. Use it well. Benita sat down hard on her bed, the money in her hands, tears streaming down her face before she could stop them. It was enough. Enough for her brother's school fees. Enough for her rent. Enough to eat something other than instant noodles for a few weeks. It was a miracle. But miracles didn't just happen, especially not to people like her. Someone had sent this. Someone knew where she lived. Someone had been watching her. The thought should have terrified her, and part of it did. But right now, staring at the food and money that meant she could breathe for another month, she couldn't bring herself to care about the why. She picked up her phone and called her brother. Hey, she said, her voice thick with tears she tried to hide. About those school fees. I've got it. You're not going anywhere. His whoop of joy made her smile despite everything. She didn't tell him about the mysterious package. Didn't tell him that someone in Seoul, someone with resources and reach, had decided she was worth helping. Didn't tell him that for the first time since she'd arrived in Korea 2 years ago, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she wasn't completely alone in this city. What she also didn't know was that in a luxury apartment in Gangnam, Taesung was watching the video feed from the camera his team had hidden across from her gashawon, watching her break down in tears of relief over a box of groceries and a sum of money that was pocket change to him. She's crying. Ho Jin observed unnecessarily, standing beside him. Yes, Taesung said quietly. You sure about this? Getting involved with a civilian, especially a foreign one? It could complicate things. Taesung didn't answer immediately. He watched Benita wipe her tears, watched her call someone, and smile. Genuinely smile in a way that transformed her exhausted face into something radiant. His mother's words echoed in his mind, from back when she'd still been sharp and clear. Real power isn't making people fear you. Real power is knowing who deserves your protection and having the strength to provide it. My mother asked for her, he said finally. That's enough. If you're wondering what happens when Benita discovers who's really behind this gift, hit that subscribe button because this story is about to get intense. Drop a like and comment. Would you accept help from a stranger, or would you be too suspicious? Let's see what happens when Benita tries to return the favor and accidentally walks straight into Taesung's world. 2 weeks passed before Benita saw Mrs. Park again. She'd almost convinced herself that the mysterious package had been some kind of charity mix-up, that maybe the woman who delivered it had gotten the wrong address, that she should feel guilty for keeping money that wasn't meant for her. But she'd already sent her brother's school fees, already paid her rent, already bought a winter coat that didn't have holes in the lining. There was no taking it back now. It was a Tuesday morning, unusually cold for late October, when Benita spotted the familiar pale blue hanbok near the bus stop 3 blocks from her usual route. Mrs. Park was standing in front of a closed shop, touching the glass window with her palm like she was trying to remember something just out of reach. Mrs. Park, Benita called out, jogging over despite the fact that she was already cutting it close for her 8 a.m. class. The old woman turned, and this time there was clear recognition in her eyes, not just vague familiarity, but actual recognition. Her whole face lit up. Daughter, Mrs. Park said in Korean, reaching for Benita's hands. I've been looking for you. Benita's Korean was basic at best, but she understood that word. Daughter. Her chest tightened. I'm not your daughter, Mrs. Park. I'm Benita, remember? I help you sometimes. But Mrs. Park was already pulling her along, surprisingly strong for someone so frail, chattering rapidly in Korean about something Benita couldn't follow. They were heading away from the care facility, toward a neighborhood that Benita didn't recognize, and alarm bells started ringing in her head. Mrs. Park, wait. Where are we going? We need to get you back to Serenity Care. Benita gently tried to redirect her, but the old woman's grip tightened, and there was something almost desperate in her eyes. Home, Mrs. Park said in English, one of the few English words she seemed to know. Home. Show you. Benita checked her phone. She had 15 minutes before class started. If she was lucky, she could get Mrs. Park somewhere safe, call the care facility, and still make it on time. If she was unlucky, well, she'd been unlucky before. What was one more absence on her record? They walked for another 10 minutes. Mrs. Park leading the way with a certainty that suggested muscle memory was kicking in where conscious thought had failed. They ended up in front of an old building that had clearly once been beautiful, Traditional Korean architecture mixed with modern renovations, surrounded by a wall that spoke of money and privacy. "This is your home?" Benita asked, surprised. The care facility had been nice, but this was something else entirely. This was wealth. Old wealth. Mrs. Park pulled her through the gate, which was unlocked, and into a courtyard garden that took Benita's breath away. Stone paths wound between carefully manicured trees, a small koi pond reflected the morning sun, and the house itself was stunning. Traditional Korean design, but clearly maintained with meticulous care. "Mrs. Park, I don't think we should be here," Benita said nervously. "If this is your old house, maybe someone else lives here now. We could be trespassing." But the old woman had already opened the front door, also unlocked, which struck Benita as odd for such a valuable property, and was pulling her inside. The interior was even more impressive, all dark wood and traditional furniture mixed with modern touches. Photos lined the walls, and Benita's eyes caught on one in particular. A younger version of Mrs. Park standing next to a stern-looking man in an expensive suit, and a teenage boy with his mother's eyes and his father's hard jaw. "My son," Mrs. Park said, pointing to the photo with pride. "Strong, powerful, protects family." A cold feeling crept down Benita's spine. She pulled out her phone, intending to call the care facility, when she heard the front door open behind them. She spun around to find a man in a dark suit standing in the entryway, his hand moving towards something under his jacket in a motion that made every survival instinct Benita had screamed danger. "Who are you?" the man demanded in Korean, then switched to heavily accented English when he saw Benita's face. "Who are you and what are you doing in this house?" "I'm sorry," Benita said quickly, putting herself between the man and Mrs. Park. "She brought me here. I was trying to help her get back to her care facility, but she insisted on coming here. I didn't break in, I swear." The gate was open. The door was unlocked. The man was speaking rapidly into a phone, his eyes never leaving Benita. Within seconds, she heard more footsteps, more voices. 3 more men appeared, all wearing similar dark suits, all looking at her with varying degrees of suspicion and hostility. "Please," Benita said, her heart hammering so hard she could barely breathe. "I'm not trying to steal anything or cause trouble. I just know her from the neighborhood. I help her sometimes when she looks lost. She seemed confused today, and I was trying to help." One of the men stepped forward, looking at Mrs. Park carefully. "Ajumma," he said respectfully, "does this girl help you?" Mrs. Park nodded enthusiastically, still holding Benita's hand. "My daughter. Good girl. Helps me cross the street." The men exchanged glances that Benita couldn't interpret. One of them pulled out his phone and made a call, speaking in rapid Korean that was too fast for Benita to follow. All she caught was one word, repeated twice, "Sajangnam." "Boss, you need to come with us," the first man said to Benita, his English improving now that the initial shock had passed. "Our employer wants to meet you." "I really can't," Benita said, pulling out her phone with shaking hands. "I have class in 5 minutes. I'm already going to be late. Can I just call the care facility and—" "This is not a request," the man said, his voice still polite, but with an undertone of steel that made it clear Benita had no choice in the matter. "You've been helping Kang Taesung's mother. He wants to thank you personally." Kang Taesung. The name meant nothing to Benita, but the way the men said it, with a mixture of respect and fear, made her stomach drop. She looked at Mrs. Park, who was smiling peacefully, completely unaware of the tension crackling through the room. "Is he going to hurt me?" Benita asked quietly. The man actually smiled at that, though it didn't reach his eyes. "If Sajangnam wanted to hurt you, you'd already be hurt. He wants to talk. That's all. But we're going to need your phone first." "What?" "No. I need to call my professor. Tell my roommate where I am." "You'll get it back," another man said, stepping forward with his hand outstretched. "But our employer values his privacy. I'm sure you understand." Benita didn't understand any of this. She was just trying to help an old woman cross the street, and now she was being detained by men who looked like they knew a dozen ways to make a body disappear. Her hands shook as she handed over her phone. "Can I at least know where we're going?" "To meet the boss," the first man said simply. "Come. We have a car waiting." They led her out through the back of the house to a black SUV with tinted windows. Mrs. Park came with them, still holding Benita's hand, still smiling like this was all perfectly normal. One of the men helped the old woman into the front seat with surprising gentleness, while Benita was directed into the back between 2 of the suited men. As the car pulled out of the driveway, Benita caught sight of her reflection in the window, eyes wide with fear, still wearing the same clothes she'd slept in, her backpack with her unfinished homework sitting uselessly between her feet. She thought about her brothers back in Lagos, about the mysterious package that had appeared at her door 2 weeks ago, about the fact that no one knew where she was right now. She thought about her grandmother's voice, the last advice she'd ever given Benita before the cancer took her. "Baby girl, your kindness is your strength. But in this world, sometimes kindness puts a target on your back. Be careful who you help, because not everyone will understand that you want nothing in return." Benita closed her eyes and prayed to a god she'd been too busy to talk to in months. She prayed that whoever this Kang Taesung was, he just wanted to say thank you. She prayed that she'd make it to class tomorrow. She prayed that helping an old woman cross the street wouldn't be the last thing she ever did. If your heart is racing right now, smash that like button and subscribe because you need to see what happens when Benita comes face to face with one of Seoul's most dangerous men. Comment below. Have you ever helped someone and ended up in a situation you didn't expect? Let's see what Kang Taesung really wants with Benita. The car ride lasted 30 minutes, winding through Seoul's streets in a pattern that seemed designed to disorient. Benita tried to keep track of landmarks, street signs, anything that would help her find her way back if she needed to run. But the men flanking her weren't threatening, just watchful. They finally pulled up to a building that looked like it belonged in a crime drama. A restaurant with shuttered windows and a single red door, the kind of place that either served the best food in Seoul or laundered money for the mob. Given her current situation, Benita was betting on the latter. One of the men opened her door. "This way, please." The politeness was almost worse than outright hostility. At least with hostility, you knew where you stood. This careful courtesy felt like a trap waiting to spring shut. Inside, the restaurant was empty except for a single table in the back where a man sat alone, a cup of tea steaming in front of him. He was younger than Benita expected, mid-30s maybe, with sharp features and eyes that seemed to catalog everything about her in the 3 seconds it took to cross the room. He wore an expensive suit tailored perfectly to his frame, and there was something in the way he held himself that screamed power even when sitting still. This was Kang Taesung. She knew it before anyone said his name. "Sit," he said in English, gesturing to the chair across from him. Not a request, an instruction. Benita sat, her hands clasped tightly in her lap to hide their shaking. Mrs. Park was being led to a private room by one of the men, the old woman waving cheerfully at Benita like they were just having a nice family outing. "Do you know who I am?" Taesung asked, studying her face with an intensity that made her want to look away. She forced herself to maintain eye contact. "No," Benita said honestly. "Should I?" Something flickered across his face, surprise, maybe, or amusement. "Most people in Seoul would know my name. But then, you're not from Seoul, are you? You're from Lagos, Nigeria, 23 years old. Seoul National University, business major. Working 3 jobs to support yourself and your 2 younger brothers back home." He paused, taking a sip of his tea. "Your brother Daniel just paid his school fees." That must have been a relief. The blood drained from Benita's face. "How do you the package?" "That was from you." "Yes." "Why?" The question came out sharper than she intended, fear manifesting as anger. "Why would you send me money? Why are you watching me? What do you want?" "You've been helping my mother," Taesung said simply, as if that explained everything. "For 2 months, whenever you encounter her lost and confused, you stop what you're doing to help her. You make sure she's safe. You guide her home. You expect nothing in return." "She needed help," Benita said, confused about why this required explanation. "She's someone's grandmother. Someone's mother. Of course I helped her." "Of course," Taesung repeated, and there was something almost sad in his voice. "You say that like it's obvious. Like it's the only possible response to seeing an old woman in distress. But most people in this city walk past. They're too busy, too focused on their own problems. They don't see her, or they see her and decide it's not their responsibility. That's not. I mean, surely other people help too." "Some do," he acknowledged. "Occasionally. Once, twice, out of obligation or guilt. But you? You do it consistently. Every single time. My security team has documented 11 separate instances of you helping my mother over the past 2 months. Different times of day, different locations, different circumstances. But always the same result. You stop, you help, you make sure she's safe." Benita's mind was reeling. Security team. Documented. 11 instances. "You've been having me watched?" "I've been having my mother watched," Taesung corrected. "She has Alzheimer's. She wanders from her care facility when the staff isn't paying attention. I hired someone to follow her discreetly to ensure her safety. You appeared in those reports. Repeatedly. And the money? The food? A thank you. And a test. A test." Benita's voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. "You tested me? By sending me money? What kind of test is that?" "The kind that reveals character," Taesung said, his voice still maddeningly calm. "I wanted to see what you would do with unexpected resources. Would you disappear? Would you get greedy and come looking for more? Would you try to leverage your connection to my mother for additional benefits?" He leaned back in his chair. "You did none of those things. You paid your brother's school fees. You paid your rent. You bought necessities. You went about your life. And this morning, when you saw my mother again, you still stopped to help her even though you were running late for class." "Because she needed help," Benita repeated, feeling like she was trapped in some kind of surreal nightmare. "I don't understand what you want from me. If this is about your mother, I'm happy to keep helping when I see her. You don't need to pay me or have me followed or," she gestured around the empty restaurant, "kidnap me to some secret meeting place to tell me that." "I didn't kidnap you," Tae-sung said mildly. I invited you for a conversation. Your men took my phone and put me in a car. That's not an invitation. That's an abduction. For the first time, something like respect flickered in his eyes. Fair point. Your phone. He nodded to Ho-jin, who materialized from somewhere in the shadows and placed Benita's phone on the table between them. You're free to leave at any time. But I hope you'll hear me out first. Benita stared at her phone, then at him, trying to read the angles and coming up empty. Nothing about this made sense. Fine. I'm listening. My mother has forgotten most things, Tae-sung said, and for the first time, there was real emotion in his voice. Grief, carefully controlled but present. She forgets my name sometimes. Forgets where she is. Forgets that my father is dead. Asks for him in the morning like he's just in the next room. But she remembers you. She asks for you. She calls you her daughter. Benita's throat tightened. I didn't know. I'm sorry. If I'd known she was confused about who I was, I would have tried to explain. Don't. Tae-sung interrupted. Don't apologize for being the one bright spot in her confusion. Do you know what it's like to watch someone you love disappear piece by piece? To see them look at you with no recognition, no memory of everything you've been through together? He stopped, visibly collecting himself. My mother built everything I have. She's the strongest person I've ever known. And this disease is taking her from me slowly, and there's nothing I can do to stop it. Benita didn't know what to say. The man across from her was dangerous. She could feel that in her bones. But he was also a son watching his mother fade away, and that was a pain she understood too well. What do you want from me? She asked quietly. I want to hire you, Tae-sung said, to spend time with my mother. Not as staff, not as a nurse, but as a companion, a friend, someone she looks forward to seeing, someone who makes her feel safe. I'm not qualified for that. I'm not a medical professional. I don't know anything about Alzheimer's care. I have medical professionals. Tae-sung cut her off. I have the best care money can buy. What I don't have is someone my mother trusts. Someone she remembers. Someone who treats her like a person instead of a patient. He named a figure. 3,000,001 per month. Part-time hours, flexible around your school schedule. You visit her 3 times a week, spend a few hours with her. Take her for walks. Read to her. Just be there. 3,000,001. That was about $2,250. More than Benita made from all 3 of her jobs combined. It was impossible. It was suspicious. It was exactly the kind of offer that came with strings attached. Why me? She asked. You could hire someone professional. Someone who actually knows what they're doing. Because she chose you. Tae-sung said simply. In all of Seoul, with all her confusion and memory loss, she chose to remember you. That has to mean something. Benita wanted to say no. Every instinct screamed that getting involved with this man and his world would lead nowhere good. But she thought about her brother's next tuition payment. Her sister's medical bills from last year that she was still paying off in tiny increments. The fact that she was one emergency away from losing everything. And she thought about Mrs. Park's face when she'd seen Benita this morning. Pure joy, uncomplicated by suspicion or calculation. Just an old woman happy to see someone she considered a friend. I need to think about it, Benita said finally. Tae-sung nodded, like he'd expected this. Of course. Take a few days. But Benita? He leaned forward, and suddenly the air in the room felt heavier. Understand that by helping my mother, you've already entered my world whether you intended to or not. I protect what's mine. My mother considers you family. That means you're under my protection now. No one will touch you. No one will threaten you. No one will harm you in any way. But it also means I need to know I can trust you. And if you decide you can't? Benita asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Then we'll have a very different conversation. He stood, signaling the meeting was over. Ho-jin will drive you wherever you need to go. Think about my offer. And Benita? Thank you for seeing my mother as a person worth helping when she had nothing to offer you in return. Drop a like if you're on the edge of your seat, and subscribe to find out if Benita accepts this dangerous offer. Comment, would you take the money, or would you run? Let's see what decision changes Benita's life forever. Benita didn't go to class. She sat in a coffee shop 3 blocks from her Gashawon, nursing a single cup of tea she couldn't afford, staring at her phone without really seeing it. Her hands had finally stopped shaking, but her mind was racing through scenarios, each one more terrifying than the last. Kang Tae-sung. She'd looked him up the moment Ho-jin had dropped her off. The search results were carefully curated. Legitimate business ventures, tech investments, philanthropic donations to children's hospitals. But between the lines, in forums and whispered discussions on Korean social media, the real story emerged. The Kang family had connections that ran deep into Seoul's underground. Protection rackets, gambling operations, enforcement for high-level debt collection. They weren't the kind of people you said no to. And she'd just been offered a job by the head of the family. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. The offer stands for 72 hours. After that, I'll assume your answer is no and we'll part ways. KTS. Part ways. Like it would be that simple. Like she could just walk away from this and go back to her normal life of poverty and exhaustion, pretending she'd never met Mrs. Park, never caught the attention of one of Seoul's most dangerous men. Another message, this time from her roommate Chisholm, another Nigerian student she barely saw because their schedules never aligned. Girl, where have you been? Your professor called the dorm looking for you. Said you missed your midterm presentation. That's 30% of your grade. Benita's stomach dropped. The presentation. She'd spent 3 weeks preparing for it, and she'd completely forgotten about it in the chaos of this morning. She typed back quickly, family emergency. Can I make it up? But she already knew the answer. Professor Yoon was strict about deadlines. No makeups, no exceptions. She'd just tanked her business strategy course, which meant her GPA would drop below the 3.5 threshold required to keep her scholarship. She put her head in her hands, fighting back tears. Everything was falling apart. Everything she'd worked for, sacrificed for, was crumbling because she'd stopped to help an old woman cross the street. Benita Sam? She looked up to find a woman in her 50s standing beside her table, well-dressed, kind eyes, speaking English with a slight accent. I'm Dr. Choi Sunny. Mr. Kong asked me to speak with you. Benita's defenses immediately went up. I haven't made a decision yet. I know. May I sit? Dr. Choi didn't wait for an answer, sliding into the chair across from her. I'm Mrs. Kang's primary physician. I've been treating her for 3 years, since her diagnosis. I'm not a doctor. I don't know anything about Alzheimer's care. I can't. I'm not here to convince you to take the job, Dr. Choi interrupted gently. I'm here to tell you about my patient. May I? Benita nodded warily. Mrs. Kang's condition is progressing, Dr. Choi said quietly. Faster than we'd hoped. She has good days and bad days, but the bad days are becoming more frequent. She gets agitated easily, confused, frightened. The care facility is excellent, but it's institutional. Clinical. She feels trapped there, even though she can't articulate why. That's terrible, Benita said sincerely. But I still don't understand how I'm supposed to help with that. 3 weeks ago, Mrs. Kong had a severe episode, Dr. Choi continued. She became convinced that her husband was still alive, that she needed to find him. She fought the nurses, tried to break through locked doors, hurt herself in the process. It took sedation to calm her down, and she was depressed for days afterward. The doctor paused. Last week, she had another episode. She was asking for you. Where's my daughter? Where's the girl who helps me? The staff didn't know who she meant, so they tried to redirect her, and she became more agitated. But then she found a small origami crane in her pocket, something you'd apparently made for her during one of your encounters. She held onto it, calmed down, fell asleep holding it. Benita remembered that day. Mrs. Park had seemed particularly sad, and Benita had folded the crane from a receipt, just trying to make her smile. She hadn't thought anything of it. You matter to her, Dr. Choi said simply, in a way that medicine can't quantify or replicate. And I know that Mr. Kong can be intimidating. His world is complicated and often dangerous. But when it comes to his mother, everything he does comes from love. He's trying to give her whatever happiness he can in the time she has left. How much time? Benita asked quietly. That's impossible to say with Alzheimer's. Could be years. Could be months. But the person she is now, the one who remembers you, who lights up when she sees you, that person is already slipping away. Soon she won't remember anyone, including herself. Benita's eyes burned. She thought about her own grandmother, about sitting by her hospital bed in those final weeks, about how desperately she'd wished for one more conversation, one more smile, one more moment of recognition before the cancer took everything. I failed my midterm today, Benita said, the words spilling out before she could stop them. Because I was helping Mrs. Park. Because your employer decided to have me brought in for a meeting. My scholarship is probably gone. I'm probably going to have to drop out and go back to Nigeria. So even if I wanted to help, even if I could help, I don't know how much longer I'll even be in Korea. Dr. Choi was quiet for a moment, then pulled out her phone and made a call. She spoke in rapid Korean, her tone respectful but firm. Then she handed the phone to Benita. Mr. Kong wants to speak with you. Benita took the phone reluctantly. Hello. You missed your presentation because of me, Taesung said without preamble. That was my fault. Give me your professor's name and contact information. I'll handle it. You can't just handle a university professor. That's not how. Benita, I own a significant portion of Seoul National University's endowment fund. I sit on their board of trustees. Your professor will allow you to make up your presentation, and it will not affect your scholarship status. Give me the information. The casual way he said it, the absolute certainty that his money and power could fix anything, should have repulsed her. Instead, she felt a desperate, shameful relief. Professor Yoon Jin-ho. Business Strategy, Section C. Done. You'll have an email within the hour confirming your makeup presentation is scheduled for next week. Anything else you need? I don't. This isn't. Benita struggled to find words. You can't just throw money at problems and expect them to disappear. I can actually. It's one of the few benefits of having money. Now, do you need anything else? Housing? Better working conditions? Should I speak to your employer at the convenience store about the customer who was racist to you last month? How do you know about that? Benita asked, but she already knew the answer. He'd been watching her, documenting her life. Probably knew more about her daily struggles than she wanted to admit. I protect what's mine, Tae-sung said, echoing his earlier words. My mother loves you. That makes you mine. So I'll ask again, what do you need? I need to think, Benita said firmly. I need time to process all of this without feeling like I'm being manipulated or controlled or… You have 72 hours, he reminded her. Use them wisely. He hung up. Benita handed the phone back to Dr. Choi, feeling like she'd just been steamrolled by a force of nature disguised as a businessman. Does he always get what he wants? Usually, Dr. Choi admitted with a slight smile. But I've known Tae-sung since he was a teenager. Under all that power and control, he's just a man who's terrified of losing his mother. The same way you're terrified of losing your brothers, of failing the people who depend on you. She stood, preparing to leave. Think about it. And Benita, whatever you decide, make sure it's really your choice. Don't let fear or obligation or even compassion push you into something you're not ready for. Mrs. Kong would want you to choose freely. After she left, Benita sat alone in the coffee shop until the staff started giving her looks that suggested she needed to order something else or leave. She walked back to her gashawon in a daze, climbed the stairs to her tiny room, and found another package waiting outside her door. This one was smaller. Inside was a smartphone, new, expensive, already programmed with a single contact, KTS. And a note. Your old phone is too easy to track. Use this if you want privacy from everyone except me. T. Benita laughed, a slightly hysterical sound that echoed in the narrow hallway. Privacy from everyone except him. As if that was reassuring. As if she wasn't already completely trapped in a web she didn't understand, spun by a man who seemed to know exactly which strings to pull to get what he wanted. She went inside, locked her door, and called her brother Daniel on her old phone. Sister, did you hear? My school fees are paid. I can stay. His excitement was infectious, pure joy untainted by the complicated reality of where that money had come from. I heard, Benita said, trying to match his energy. I'm so proud of you, Daniel. Keep working hard, okay? I will. Sister, are you okay? You sound tired. Just a long day, she said, which was possibly the understatement of the century. I love you. Tell Emmanuel I love him too. We love you too. You're the best sister in the world. After they hung up, Benita sat on her bed and cried. Not the desperate tears from earlier, but something deeper. Grief for the simple life she'd had just this morning, before she'd known about Kong Tae-sung and his world. Grief for the innocence of helping an old woman without understanding the cost. But also, beneath the fear and uncertainty, a tiny spark of something else. Hope. The possibility that maybe, just maybe, she could help Mrs. Park. That she could make someone's last coherent moments a little brighter. That her kindness hadn't been a mistake, but a door opening to something she never could have imagined. If you're invested in Benita's impossible choice, hit that like button and subscribe because the next part changes everything. Comment below, what would you do in her situation? Let's see what happens when Benita makes her decision. Benita had 48 hours left to decide when everything went wrong. She was working the night shift at the Family Mart, restocking shelves at 2 a.m., when 3 drunk men stumbled in. She recognized the type immediately. Salarymen who'd been drinking since dinner, looking for trouble or cigarettes or both. Usually they were harmless, just loud and sloppy. But tonight, one of them focused on her with the kind of attention that made her skin crawl. Hey, African girl, he called out in slurred Korean, using a term that wasn't quite a slur, but wasn't friendly either. You speak Korean? A little, Benita said carefully, keeping her voice neutral, professional. Can I help you find something? You can help me with lots of things, he said, grinning at his friends, who laughed like he'd said something clever. He moved closer, invading her space, smelling like soju and cigarettes. How much for private English lesson? Benita stepped back, maintaining her customer service smile, even though her heart was racing. I'm sorry, sir, I don't do private tutoring. If you're looking for language lessons, I can recommend some schools. He grabbed her wrist. Not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to prevent her from pulling away. I think you misunderstand. I'm not asking about English. His friends were still laughing, not intervening, treating this like entertainment. Sir, please let go, Benita said firmly, abandoning the polite tone. You need to leave. Or what? You call your boss. He leaned in closer. You think he cares what happens to foreign workers? You're replaceable. Benita was reaching for the panic button under the counter when the bell above the door chimed. 2 men in dark suits walked in. Not customers, she realized immediately. They moved with purpose, their eyes scanning the store with professional efficiency before landing on the scene at the counter. The drunk man's grip on her wrist loosened as he registered the newcomers. Something in their bearing, their stance, triggered his survival instincts even through the alcohol. We were just leaving, he mumbled, backing away. Yes, you were, one of the suited men said in Korean, his voice pleasant but carrying an undertone that made it clear this wasn't a suggestion. And you're going to apologize to the lady first. I didn't do anything. The man's hand moved to his jacket, not threatening, just a reminder that he could be threatening if necessary. Apologize. The drunk man muttered something that might have been an apology and scrambled out with his friends. The bell chimed again as they left, and suddenly the store felt very quiet. Are you all right? The first man asked Benita in English, his accent American educated. I'm fine, Benita said, even though she wasn't. Her hands were shaking, adrenaline still flooding her system. Did Mr. Kong send you? We're assigned to ensure your safety, he confirmed, not quite answering the question. I'm Agent Park. This is Agent Kim. You won't see us most of the time, but we're always nearby. I didn't agree to be followed, Benita said, anger cutting through her fear. I haven't even made my decision yet. The boss was clear, Agent Park said simply. You're under protection regardless of your decision. Those men won't bother you again. Neither will anyone else. They left as quietly as they'd arrived, and Benita was alone again with the hum of refrigerators and fluorescent lights. She should have felt safer, knowing someone was watching over her. Instead, she felt trapped. Taesung's protection was also surveillance, his generosity also control. Every gift came with invisible strings. She pulled out the new phone he'd given her and stared at it for a long moment before typing. I don't need bodyguards. I need to make my own choices without being manipulated. His response came within seconds. Those men would have hurt you. Do you think your convenience store manager would have protected you? Do you think the police would have cared about another foreign worker's complaint? You can resent my methods, but you're safe because of them. Benita wanted to argue, to push back against his assumption that she needed his protection, that she couldn't take care of herself. But he was right, and that made it worse. She was vulnerable in ways she'd been trying not to think about. A foreign woman in a country where she had no real power, no connections, no safety net except what she built through sheer determination. What do you want from me? She typed back. Really? Because this doesn't feel like just helping your mother anymore. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, come to dinner tomorrow. The house where you found my mother. 7 p.m. I'll answer any question you have. After that, you decide. No more pressure, no more manipulation. Just honesty. Benita laughed bitterly. Honesty from a man who ran a criminal empire. But what choice did she have? She was already in this, whether she wanted to be or not. Might as well understand what she was getting into. Fine, she typed. But if this is some kind of trap, if I wanted to trap you, Benita, you'd already be trapped. This is me trying to do the right thing, which is apparently much harder than doing the wrong thing. 7 p.m. Come alone. Agents Park and Kim will make sure you arrive safely. The next day crawled by. Benita attended her classes in a fog, unable to focus on lectures about market analysis and consumer behavior when her own life had become more surreal than any case study. She checked her email obsessively until Professor Yoon's message finally arrived. Miss Sam, due to extenuating circumstances, you may present your midterm project next Friday. Please see me during office hours to discuss. Professor Yoon. Extenuating circumstances. That was one way to describe having Seoul's underground power broker make a phone call on your behalf. At 6:30 p.m., Benita changed into the one nice dress she owned, bought secondhand for job interviews she'd never gotten, and walked to the address. She spotted Agents Park and Kim trailing her at a discreet distance, saw them nod to 2 other men stationed near the house. The security was both impressive and terrifying. The gate opened before she could knock. Ho-jin stood there, his expression unreadable. Miss Sam, please, come in. Sejangnam is waiting in the garden. The house looked different in the evening light, softer somehow. Traditional lanterns illuminated the stone pathways, and she could hear water trickling from the koi pond. Taesung sat at a low table on the veranda, wearing casual clothes, black shirt, dark slacks, looking more human and somehow more dangerous without the armor of his business suit. You came, he said, standing as she approached. Thank you. I want answers, Benita said, not bothering with pleasantries. Real answers, not carefully constructed half-truths. Then ask real questions, Taesung replied, gesturing for her to sit. The table was set for 2, traditional Korean dishes that smelled incredible. But eat first. You've lost weight since this started, and I doubt you've had a proper meal today. Benita wanted to argue, but her stomach betrayed her with an embarrassing growl. She sat, and despite her intentions to remain cold and professional, found herself devouring the food. It had been so long since she'd eaten anything that wasn't instant noodles or convenience store kimbap. Taesung watched her eat with an expression that might have been satisfaction. Better. Don't patronize me, Benita said around a mouthful of bulgogi. Just because I'm hungry doesn't mean I trust you. Good, he said, surprising her. You shouldn't trust me. I'm not a good man, Benita. I've done things that would horrify you. I've hurt people who deserved it, and some who probably didn't. I've built my life on fear and force and the willingness to do what others won't. He poured tea for both of them, the gesture almost absurdly civilized given what he was saying. But my mother is dying, and she's scared, and you're the only person who makes her feel safe. So I'm asking you, not ordering, not manipulating, asking, to help her. Not for me. For her. And what happens to me after she's gone? Benita asked quietly. Do I just go back to my normal life, pretending I was never involved with whatever this is? Do your enemies come after me thinking I know things? Do I spend the rest of my time in Korea looking over my shoulder? No, Taesung said firmly. If you do this, if you choose to help my mother, then you become family. Not by blood, but by choice. And I protect my family absolutely. When my mother passes, you'll have options. Continue working for me in legitimate business if you want. Return to Nigeria with enough money to start whatever life you dream of. Stay in Korea with permanent residency and a job that doesn't involve convenience stores and poverty. Whatever you choose, you'll be safe. That's a lot of promises from someone who just admitted he's not a good man. I'm not good, Taesung agreed. But I keep my word. Ask anyone in Seoul who knows my name. Kang Taesung's word is absolute. I don't lie, I don't cheat on deals, and I don't break promises. It's not morality, it's practicality. My reputation is worth more than any short-term gain from deception. Benita studied him, trying to see past the careful control to whatever truth lay beneath. What happened to your father? The question clearly surprised him. Why do you ask? Because your mother asked for him. Because understanding your family might help me understand what I'm walking into. Taesung was quiet for a long moment, staring into his tea like it held answers. My father was a good man, he finally said. Weak, but good. He wanted to run a legitimate business, build something clean. But clean businesses don't survive in neighborhoods like where we came from. My mother did what was necessary to keep us alive, to give me opportunities my father's principles never could have provided. She built the criminal empire. She built survival. Taesung corrected. And yes, that meant getting her hands dirty. When my father found out the full extent of what she'd done, what she'd become, it broke something in him. He didn't leave her. He loved her too much for that. But he stopped looking at her the same way. Stopped touching her. Stopped really seeing her. He died of a heart attack when I was 19, but I think he'd already been dying slowly for years before that. And you blame your mother for that, Benita said softly. No, Taesung said, and there was conviction in his voice. I blame the world that forced her to choose between morality and survival. I blame poverty and desperation and a system that offers no mercy to people who start with nothing. My father had the luxury of principles because my mother paid the price for them. He looked directly at Benita. You understand that, don't you? You work 3 jobs, sacrifice sleep and health and your own dreams to send money home to your brothers. You don't have the luxury of only doing good things. You do what's necessary. Benita felt seen in a way that was uncomfortable and validating at the same time. That's different. I'm not running criminal operations. The principle is the same. Survival requires compromise. The only difference is scale. He refilled her tea. My mother is 73 years old. She survived the Korean War as a child, built a business from nothing, raised me alone after my father's death, and never once apologized for the choices she made. She's the strongest person I've ever known. And now I have to watch her forget how to tie her own shoes. Forget my name. Forget who she is. His voice cracked slightly on the last words, the first real vulnerability Benita had seen from him. I'm sorry, Benita said, and meant it. Don't be sorry. Just help her. However much time she has left where she still remembers anything, I want her to be happy. And you make her happy. That's all I'm asking for. For 3 million won a month, Benita pointed out. That's not charity, that's a salary. What's the real catch? Taesung smiled slightly. Smart. The catch is that you'll see things. Hear things. Meet people who are part of my world. You'll be trusted with access to my family, which means you'll inevitably learn details about my business. I need to know you won't use that information against me or sell it to my enemies. I don't even know who your enemies are. And it's better that way. But you'll need to sign a non-disclosure agreement. Anything you see or hear related to my business stays confidential. Forever. The penalty for breaking that agreement is severe. How severe? Severe enough that you should never test it, Taesung said flatly. I'm trying to be honest with you, Benita. This job comes with money and protection, but it also comes with risks. You'll be associated with me, which makes you a potential target for people who want to hurt me. You'll know things that could be dangerous to know. And you'll have to accept that the man paying your salary has done things that would probably keep you awake at night if you knew the details. Benita pushed her plate away, her appetite gone despite the food remaining. This is insane. You know that, right? I came to Korea to get a business degree and build a better life, not to get involved with organized crime. Life rarely asks permission before changing direction, Taesung said. You can say no. Walk away right now. I'll make sure you're safe, make sure your scholarship is protected, and we'll never speak again. My mother will be disappointed, confused, probably upset. But she'll forget eventually. She forgets everything eventually. The pain in those last words was palpable. That's manipulative, Benita accused. Using your mother's condition to guilt me into agreeing. Yes, Taesung admitted without shame. I'm using every tool I have to get what I want, which is happiness for my mother in her final coherent months. But I'm also being honest about what this entails. That's more than most people in my position would offer. Benita stood up, needing to move, to think without his intense gaze on her. She walked to the edge of the veranda, looking out at the garden where Mrs. Park had led her just yesterday morning. It felt like a lifetime ago. Can I meet her again before I decide? Benita asked. Your mother. Can I see her, talk to her, without an audience or pressure, or all of this? She gestured vaguely at the house, the guards, the entire, overwhelming situation. Of course, Taesung said. I'll arrange for you to visit her tomorrow at the care facility. Just you and her. I won't even be there. Dr. Choi will be present in case of any medical issues, but otherwise, it's just time with my mother. See how she is on a typical day. Then decide. Benita nodded slowly. And if I say no? If I meet her and decide I can't do this? Then you say no? And I mean what I said. You'll be safe, your scholarship protected, your life your own. I don't punish people for refusing to help, Benita. That would make me the villain in this story, and I'd like to think I'm at least a complicated antihero. He said it with a slight smile that didn't reach his eyes. You're definitely not the hero, Benita said, but without real venom. No, he agreed. But I might be the best option you have right now. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., Serenity Care Facility. Dr. Choi will meet you at the entrance. Take all the time you need. Ho Jin appeared silently to escort her out, and Benita found herself back on the street with Agents Park and Kim shadowing her at a distance, her head spinning with questions and doubts, and the terrible certainty that no matter what she decided, her life would never be simple again. That night, she video called her brothers. Daniel answered, Emmanuel's face appearing beside his on the screen, both of them grinning. Sister, we were just talking about you. Good things, I hope, Benita said, trying to sound normal, cheerful, like she wasn't contemplating accepting money from a crime boss to spend time with his dying mother. Daniel said you're dating a rich Korean guy, Emmanuel announced, making Daniel smack his shoulder. I did not say that. I said maybe she met someone nice who helped her out. You're the one who made it weird. I'm not dating anyone, Benita said quickly. I made a friend, an elderly woman who needs help sometimes. Her son offered to pay me to spend time with her since I was already doing it for free. That's perfect, Daniel said. See, Emmanuel, I told you sister is too smart to be dating. She's focused on her career. Actually, Benita said slowly, I wanted to ask you both something. If I took a job that paid really well but was complicated, maybe not dangerous exactly, but involved with people who aren't entirely legitimate, would you want me to take it? Both boys were quiet for a moment. Then Emmanuel, who was only 16 but somehow always the wise one, said, Is it legal? The job itself? Yes. Spending time with an old lady, keeping her company. Completely legal. But the people paying you, Daniel pressed, are probably not entirely legal in how they make their money, Benita admitted. Will it help you? Emmanuel asked. Will it make your life easier? Let you study without working 3 jobs? Let you sleep more than 4 hours a night? Benita's throat tightened. She hadn't realized they knew how little she slept. Yes, it would help a lot. Then take it, Daniel said firmly. Sister, you've sacrificed everything for us. If someone wants to pay you good money to do something kind, take the money. We'll be fine. But what if something goes wrong? What if these people? What if you collapse from exhaustion? Emmanuel interrupted. What if you fail your classes because you're working yourself to death? What if we lose you because you're too proud to accept help? His voice cracked slightly. We already lost Mama. We can't lose you too. Benita was crying openly now, not even trying to hide it. I love you both so much. We love you too, they said in unison. Now stop crying and go get that money. After they hung up, Benita sat in her tiny gashawan and made a list on a piece of paper. On one side, all the reasons to say no. On the other, all the reasons to say yes. The no side had things like dangerous, morally questionable, could end badly. The yes side had things like help Mrs. Park, financial stability, finish degree, support brothers. But at the bottom of the yes column, she wrote one more thing. Maybe some good can come from this. The next day at 2 p.m., Benita stood outside the Serenity Care Facility, her stomach churning with anxiety. Dr. Choi met her at the entrance with a warm smile. Ready? The doctor asked. No, Benita admitted. But let's do this anyway. They walked through pleasant corridors decorated with artwork and plants, nothing like the sterile institutional facilities Benita had imagined. Dr. Choi led her to a private room overlooking a garden, where Mrs. Park sat in a comfortable chair by the window, staring outside with an expression that broke Benita's heart. Lost, confused, searching for something she couldn't name. Mrs. Park, Dr. Choi said gently in Korean. You have a visitor. The old woman turned, and when she saw Benita, her entire face transformed. Daughter, she exclaimed, reaching out with trembling hands. You came. I was waiting for you. Hit that like button if you're feeling emotional right now, and subscribe to see what Benita decides. Comment. Have you ever had to make an impossible choice? Let's see what happens next. Benita crossed the room and took Mrs. Park's hands in hers, feeling their fragility, their desperate grip. Hello, Mrs. Park. It's good to see you. I was worried, Mrs. Park said in Korean, which Dr. Choi quietly translated. I thought maybe I dreamed you. Sometimes I can't tell what's real anymore. But you're here. You're real. I'm real, Benita confirmed, sitting beside her. I'm here. Dr. Choi excused herself discreetly, leaving them alone. For the next 2 hours, Benita sat with Mrs. Park. They didn't talk much. Mrs. Park's English was limited and Benita's Korean was basic, but somehow they communicated anyway. Mrs. Park showed her photos from an album she kept beside her chair, pointing to pictures and saying names Benita couldn't understand, but nodded it anyway. There were photos of a younger Mrs. Park, fierce and beautiful, standing in front of what looked like a market stall. Photos of a serious-looking man who must have been her husband. Photos of a young Taesung at various ages, always with that same intense gaze even as a child. My son, Mrs. Park said in English, tapping a photo of teenage Taesung. Strong boy, good boy, protects mama. He loves you very much, Benita said. Mrs. Park's eyes grew distant. Sometimes I forget his face. I look at him and I know I should know him, but the knowing is gone. Like trying to hold water in my hands. She made a gesture of water slipping through her fingers. Everything slips away. But you, she touched Benita's cheek. You I remember. Why is that? I don't know, Benita said honestly, her voice thick with emotion. Maybe because you have kind eyes, Mrs. Park said. Like my daughter would have. I never had a daughter. Only my strong boy. But if I had a daughter, she would have kind eyes like yours. They sat together while the afternoon light shifted through the windows, and Benita read to her from a Korean children's book that Dr. Choi had left on the table. Benita stumbled over the pronunciation, making Mrs. Park laugh and gently correct her, and for those moments, the old woman seemed almost like herself, present, engaged, teaching instead of forgetting. But then Mrs. Park looked out the window and said, I need to go home. My husband will be worried. He doesn't like when I'm late for dinner. Mrs. Park, Benita said gently, it's okay. You're safe here. No, you don't understand. Mrs. Park started to stand, agitation creeping into her voice. He gets angry when I'm late. I need to cook. I need to. Where's my apron? Where? She looked around frantically, her breathing becoming rapid and shallow. Benita took her hands again, keeping her voice calm. Mrs. Park, look at me. Look at my eyes. You're safe. I'm here with you. You don't need to go anywhere right now. But dinner is already prepared, Benita improvised. I took care of it. Everything is ready. You can rest now. Mrs. Park searched Benita's face, the confusion slowly fading, replaced by trust. You prepared dinner? Yes. Everything is taken care of. You're such a good daughter, Mrs. Park said, settling back into her chair. Always taking care of your old mother. Benita's heart clenched, but she didn't correct her. If believing Benita was her daughter brought Mrs. Park comfort, what did the truth matter? Within minutes, Mrs. Park had dozed off, her head tilted against the chair, her breathing even and peaceful. Dr. Choi returned quietly, checking Mrs. Park's vitals. You handled that episode beautifully, she whispered. Many people panic or try to argue with reality, which only makes it worse. You gave her what she needed, reassurance and redirection. I didn't know what I was doing, Benita admitted. I just didn't want her to be scared. That's exactly the right instinct, Dr. Choi said. This disease is terrifying for the people experiencing it. Having someone who can anchor them, make them feel safe, is invaluable. You're a natural at this. Or maybe I'm just good at pretending everything's okay when it's not, Benita said quietly, watching Mrs. Park sleep. Dr. Choi studied her for a moment. You're going to say yes, aren't you? To Mr. Kang's offer. I don't know, Benita said. But she did know. She'd known from the moment Mrs. Park's face had lit up at seeing her. From the moment those trembling hands had gripped hers like Benita was the only solid thing in a world that was dissolving around her. How long does she have? Before she doesn't remember anyone. It's progressing faster than typical, Dr. Choi said carefully. The stress of the transitions, the wandering episodes, they're accelerating the decline. I'd estimate she has maybe 6 months, possibly less, before she's in late-stage Alzheimer's. After that, she'll likely stop speaking, stop recognizing anyone or anything. She'll need full-time medical care. 6 months. Half a year to be someone's daughter, someone's anchor, someone's comfort in the terrifying process of losing yourself piece by piece. If I do this, Benita said slowly, I need some conditions. Things that are non-negotiable. Tell me. I'll make sure Mr. Kang hears them. First, I'm not getting involved in his business. I spend time with Mrs. Park, period. I don't run errands. I don't carry messages. I don't become some kind of accessory to whatever illegal activities he's running. Fair. Second, if at any point I feel unsafe or compromised, I can walk away. No retaliation, no threats, no making my life difficult because I chose to leave. I'll make sure that's written into any contract. Third, my brother's back home. They're off limits. Completely. No using them as leverage, no threats against them, No involvement whatsoever. Absolutely. And fourth, Benita said, her voice firm despite the fear churning in her stomach. I want to finish my degree. This job can't interfere with my education. Flexible hours, yes, but my classes and academic obligations come first. Dr. Choi smiled. Mr. Kong already anticipated that one. He's quite invested in your academic success, actually. I think he sees potential in you beyond just companionship for his mother. What does that mean? It means Kong Taesung doesn't do anything without multiple purposes. Yes, he wants you to help his mother. But he's also evaluating you, seeing if you have the qualities he looks for in people he trusts. Intelligence, loyalty, discretion. If you prove yourself with his mother, there could be opportunities afterward. Legitimate opportunities in his business holdings. I'm not interested in being groomed for his organization, Benita said sharply. Then don't be, Dr. Choi said simply. But don't close doors before you know what's behind them. 6 months from now, you'll have your degree, money saved, and options you don't have right now. What you do with those options is entirely up to you. Benita looked at Mrs. Park, peaceful in sleep, and thought about how the old woman had built an empire to protect her son, how she'd done what was necessary in a world that offered no mercy to the weak. Maybe that's what Benita was doing too, not building an empire, but making impossible choices in a world that demanded them. Okay, she said finally. I'll do it. But I want everything we discussed in writing, and I want a lawyer, my own lawyer, not someone connected to the Kong family, to review the contract before I sign anything. Mr. Kong will appreciate that, Dr. Choi said. He respects people who protect themselves. That evening, Benita received a message on the phone Taesung had given her. Dr. Choi told me your conditions. All accepted. Contract will be ready tomorrow. Thank you for giving my mother this gift. T. She stared at the message for a long time before typing back. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for her. His response was immediate. I know. That's why I trust you. The next week passed in a blur of contract negotiations, paperwork, and the surreal experience of having a lawyer, paid for by Taesung but independent, review every clause of her agreement. The contract was surprisingly straightforward. 3 million won per month, 3 visits per week of 2 to 4 hours each, flexible scheduling around her academic obligations, complete confidentiality regarding anything she observed about the Kong family business, and a termination clause that allowed her to leave with 2 weeks' notice for any reason. This is actually a very fair contract, her lawyer said, a middle-aged woman named Young Mi-sun who specialized in entertainment and high-profile employment contracts. I've seen much worse from families with this kind of power. He's protecting himself with the NDA, but he's also protecting you with some unusual clauses. Like what? Like this section here. Ms. Young pointed to page 3. If anything happens to you as a result of your association with the Kong family, threats, violence, harassment, they're contractually obligated to provide legal support, security, and relocation if necessary. That's not standard. Usually, employers try to limit their liability. This contract actually increases his. Why would he do that? Ms. Young looked at her over her glasses. Because he's either genuinely concerned for your welfare, or he's setting up a legal framework that makes it very difficult for you to later claim you were coerced or endangered. Probably both. These kinds of people think 10 steps ahead. Benita signed the contract on a Friday afternoon in Ms. Young's office, her hand steady despite the weight of what she was agreeing to. The moment her pen left the paper, her phone buzzed with a bank notification. 3 million Korean wons had been deposited into her account. That night, she quit 2 of her 3 jobs, kept the tutoring because she actually enjoyed it, but said goodbye to the convenience store and the translation work that had been slowly destroying her sleep schedule and her sanity. Her manager at the Family Mart was surprised but understanding. You find better opportunity? He asked in broken English. Something like that, Benita said. Good for you. You work too hard. Too much stress for a young person. If only he knew that her new job came with its own kind of stress, the kind that involved bodyguards and crime bosses, and the knowledge that she was now tangled in a world where mistakes could be fatal. Her first official visit with Mrs. Park was scheduled for Monday afternoon. Sunday night, unable to sleep, Benita researched Alzheimer's care, read articles about communication strategies and behavioral management, watched videos of families dealing with the disease. She wanted to be prepared, to be useful, to be worth the money she was being paid. But as she lay in her gashawan at 2 a.m., staring at the ceiling, she realized that no amount of research could prepare her for the reality of watching someone disappear. No article could tell her how to handle the weight of being someone's anchor when she barely felt anchored herself. Her phone buzzed. A message from Taesung. Can't sleep either? How did you know I was awake? She typed back. Security cameras at your building show your lights still on. Also, I couldn't sleep either, so I assumed you might be having similar thoughts. That's not creepy at all, Benita responded, but without real anger. She was starting to understand that Taesung's surveillance wasn't personal. It was just how he operated, how he maintained control over his world. Tomorrow will be fine, he messaged. My mother already loves you. Just be yourself. What if myself isn't enough? There was a longer pause before his response came. Then you'll be in good company. I've spent my whole life feeling like I'm not enough for her. But we show up anyway. That's all we can do. If you're emotionally invested in this journey, hit that like button and subscribe. Comment. What would your first day be like in her shoes? Let's see how Benita handles her new reality. Monday arrived with unexpected snow, rare for Seoul, in late October. Benita stood outside the Serenity Care facility at 1:45 p.m., 15 minutes early, watching the flakes drift down and trying to calm her racing heart. This was it. Her first official day as a paid companion to a woman with Alzheimer's, funded by money from Seoul's criminal underground. Her life had become a Korean drama she never auditioned for. Dr. Choi met her at the entrance, holding 2 cups of tea. Thought you might need this, she said, handing one to Benita. First day nerves are normal. Does it show that much? You look like you're about to face a firing squad, not spend time with a sweet old lady. Dr. Choi's smile was kind. Relax. There's no performance here, no test to pass. Just be present with her. That's all anyone can ask. They walked to Mrs. Park's room together, but before they entered, Dr. Choi stopped. One more thing. Today is a bad day. She woke up confused, didn't recognize the staff, has been asking for her husband repeatedly. I'm telling you this so you're not surprised or discouraged. Bad days are part of the disease. Benita nodded, steeling herself, and they entered the room. Mrs. Park sat by the window again, but there was no light in her face today. She looked smaller somehow, more fragile, her hands twisting anxiously in her lap. Mrs. Park, Dr. Choi said gently in Korean, your friend Benita is here. The old woman looked up, and for a terrible moment, there was no recognition in her eyes. Benita's heart sank. But then, slowly, something shifted in Mrs. Park's expression, not full recognition, but a sense of familiarity, of safety. Do I know you? Mrs. Park asked in Korean. Benita sat down carefully, keeping her movements slow and non-threatening. Yes, we're friends. I'm Benita. I help you sometimes, remember? I forget everything now, Mrs. Park said, her voice trembling. I can't hold on to anything. It all slips away like water. Like sand. Like, she trailed off, frustrated by her inability to find words. That must be scary, Benita said softly. Mrs. Park's eyes filled with tears. I'm so scared. I don't know where I am. I don't know who I am anymore. Everything is fog and shadows and nothing makes sense. Benita took her hands, those delicate, trembling hands that had built an empire and raised a son and survived a war. You're Mrs. Park. You're strong and brave. You're here in a safe place with people who care about you. And I'm here too. I'm not going anywhere. Promise? Mrs. Park asked, sounding like a child. I promise. They sat like that for a long time, Benita holding Mrs. Park's hands, occasionally talking about small things, the snow outside, the warmth of the tea, the softness of the blanket over Mrs. Park's lap. Nothing profound, nothing that required memory or context. Just presence. Just being there. Gradually, Mrs. Park calmed. The anxiety lines around her mouth softened. She didn't remember who Benita was, but she responded to the calmness, the gentle voice, the patient presence. They looked at photo albums again, and this time Mrs. Park couldn't name anyone in the pictures, but she smiled at them anyway, responding to some emotional memory that transcended conscious recall. This one, Mrs. Park said, pointing to a photo of young Tae-sung, maybe 7 or 8 years old, grinning at the camera with a missing front tooth. This boy? I love this boy. I don't remember his name, but I love him so much it hurts. Benita's throat tightened. He loves you too. Very much. He thinks about you all the time. Does he visit? Yes. Often. I wish I could remember his face when he's not here. I wish I could hold on to something. Anything. Mrs. Park closed the album with shaking hands. What's the point of a life you can't remember? What's the point of love if it just evaporates like it never existed? It existed, Benita said firmly. Just because you can't remember doesn't mean it wasn't real. That boy you love, he remembers. He carries all those memories for both of you. Your love shaped him into who he is. That doesn't disappear just because the memory does. Mrs. Park studied Benita's face for a long moment. You're very wise for someone so young. I'm not wise. I'm just trying to help. Why? Why do you help an old woman who can't even remember your name? It was the same question Tae-sung had asked, the same question Benita had been asking herself. She thought about all the complicated reasons, the money, the protection, the opportunity. But sitting here in this room with this frightened, fading woman, none of that felt like the real answer. Because my grandmother taught me that we're all just walking each other home, Benita said quietly. Everyone ends up at the same place eventually. The kindness we show along the way is all that really matters. Mrs. Park smiled, really smiled, and squeezed Benita's hands. Your grandmother sounds like a very smart woman. She she died 3 years ago. Cancer. I'm sorry, Mrs. Park said, and in that moment, she sounded completely lucid, completely present. Losing the people who shape us. That's the hardest thing. Harder than forgetting. At least forgetting doesn't hurt quite as much. They spent another hour together before Mrs. Park grew tired. As Benita prepared to leave, the old woman grabbed her wrist with surprising strength. You'll come back? I'll come back. Wednesday afternoon. I promise. I won't remember this conversation. That's okay. I'll remember for both of us. Outside Mrs. Park's room, Dr. Choi was waiting with an expression that might have been approval. You're good at this. Really good. I don't feel good at it. I feel like I'm drowning and pretending I can swim. That's most of life, isn't it? Dr. Choi said. Mr. Kong is waiting in the family conference room if you have a few minutes. He'd like to speak with you. Benita's stomach nodded. Is something wrong? No. I think he just wants to thank you. And probably assess how you're handling things. The conference room was small and private, with a view of the facility's garden. Taesung stood by the window, his back to the door, his posture rigid. He didn't turn immediately when Benita entered. She didn't remember me this morning, he said quietly. I visited before my morning meetings. Brought her favorite pastries from the bakery she used to love. She looked at me like I was a stranger. Polite, but completely blank. No recognition at all. Benita didn't know what to say. What comfort could she offer for that kind of loss? But Dr. Choi just showed me the video feed from her room during your visit. Taesung continued, finally turning to face her. She didn't remember you either, but you still reached her. Still made her feel safe. He stopped, his jaw working as he struggled with emotion. That's everything. Thank you. I didn't do anything special, Benita said. I just sat with her. That's what's special about it, Taesung said. You just sat with her. No agenda, no trying to force memory or recognition. You met her where she was. Most people can't do that. They want the person they remember, not the person standing in front of them. Your mother talked about that, Benita said. About love evaporating. About the point of a life you can't remember. What did you tell her? That just because she forgets doesn't mean it wasn't real. That you carry the memories for both of you now. Taesung was quiet for a long moment. My father used to say something similar. That love isn't about being remembered. It's about how you change the people you touch. That we're all just collections of everyone who ever loved us. He smiled sadly. I didn't understand what he meant until now. He sounds like he was a good man. He was. Too good for the life my mother built. But he stayed anyway because he loved her. Even when that love cost him pieces of himself. Taesung moved away from the window, his businessman persona sliding back into place. You did well today. Better than I expected for a first visit on a difficult day. The second payment will be in your account tonight, along with a bonus for handling things so gracefully. You don't need to pay me extra. We have a contract. Consider it a signing bonus then. Use it however you want. Send it to your brothers. Save it. Buy yourself something that isn't secondhand for once. He pulled out an envelope. Also, this is for you. A new ID card that identifies you as family for the facility. It gives you 24/7 access to visit my mother whenever you want, not just scheduled times. If she's having a crisis and the staff thinks your presence would help, they'll call you. You're not obligated to respond to those calls, but the option is there. Benita took the envelope, the weight of it feeling heavier than it should. I'm not actually family. No, Taesung agreed. But my mother thinks you are, and that's close enough. In her mind, you're her daughter. And honestly, you've shown more care for her in 3 visits than most of my actual relatives have in 3 years. Blood doesn't make family. Choice does. She chose you. I'm just making it official. This is a lot, Benita said, overwhelmed by the ID card, the bonus, the trust being placed in her. You can handle it, Taesung said with certainty. I'm a good judge of character, Benita. I have to be. My life depends on knowing who to trust and who to destroy. You're someone worth trusting. Now go home. Rest, process today. Wednesday will be easier. They usually are after the first time. But Wednesday wasn't easier. Mrs. Park had fallen during the night. Nothing serious but enough to frighten her. And she spent most of Benita's visit crying about wanting to go home, wanting her husband, wanting things to make sense again. Benita held her through it, reading children's stories in halting Korean, singing soft songs her grandmother used to sing, just being present through the storm of confusion and fear. Friday was better. Mrs. Park was having a good day, recognized Benita immediately, asked her to bring Korean food next time because the food here tastes like cardboard. They laughed together, took a short walk in the garden despite the cold, watched snow fall through the windows like they were inside a snow globe, separate from the rest of the world. And so the weeks began to take shape. 3 visits that varied wildly depending on Mrs. Park's clarity that day. Good days where they talked and laughed, and Benita could almost pretend nothing was wrong. Bad days where Mrs. Park didn't know where or who she was, where fear and confusion ruled everything. In between days where recognition flickered in and out like a faulty light bulb, where Mrs. Park called her by different names, daughter, sister, friend, and Benita answered to all of them.